If there ever were a we can do, the patriotism in both world wars, World War I, a big supplier to the war effort, World War II, the arsenal of democracy.
Because I was brought up and reading in the schools and everything and such about how Detroit stopped everything it was doing during World War II and produced enough material to give to the Allies and basically crush fascism. And that's something that we're always proud of here.
Detroit had a worldwide reputation, well-deserved, patriotism to go with it, labor force to go with it, one that knew what it was doing. Within 40 miles of downtown Detroit, you could find any type of engineer that existed on the face of the earth. Now you tell me that isn't the raw ingredients for productivity and capital investment. That's what it was all about. That's what Detroit would have to restore in order to achieve regrowth, rebirth, renaissance.
Working conditions, primarily. The workers wanted and demanded safer working conditions. They wanted cleaner environments, and they wanted healthier environments. And that's why they came into play. And they helped clean up some dangerous situations that were happening in auto plants all over the place. Over time, the contract provisions have gotten so restrictive. I mean, there are jokes that they used to tell, you know, a light bulb would go out and you had to call the union electrician to come change the light bulb. Even though it was your station, you couldn't turn around and change the light bulb. And so the provisions became so ridiculous that they've sort of made themselves irrelevant.
The union model has been unsustainable.
They used to have some ridiculous provisions. One of them was the Jobs Bank, where they paid laid off workers to come to work and do nothing. And there were workers who sat there for years and never worked on the auto floor again. Legacy costs helped bankrupt GM and Chrysler. Auto workers were guaranteed pensions. So now most people get 401ks. You invest yourself into it, the company sometimes matches it, and the auto companies just absolutely stayed away from that. So they were still letting people accrue pensions, and you had more people accruing and collecting on pensions than you had people working to pay off those pensions.
The rest of the world was restructuring faster, and they were beginning to move to the South, the right to work states where there's more flexibility. You don't have to be a member of a union or pay union dues to be an auto worker, and they trained their own. Even when the auto industry, the big three, were laying off workers because they were losing market share and capacity, the Hondas, Toyotas, Nissans didn't want our laid off auto workers because they were, I remember this keenly, in their estimation, the Japanese spoiled. They weren't the workforce. They'll start from scratch and make their own culture, and that's what they did.
Automakers have faced serious challenges. Burdensome costs, a shrinking share of the market, and declining profits. In recent months, the global financial crisis has made these challenges even more severe. Now some U.S. auto executives say that their companies are nearing collapse, and that the only way they can buy time to restructure is with help from the federal government. It's a difficult situation that involves fundamental questions about the proper role of government. On the one hand, government has a responsibility not to undermine the private enterprise system. On the other hand, government has a responsibility to safeguard the broader health and stability of our economy. Addressing the challenges in the auto industry requires us to balance these two responsibilities. If we were to allow the free market to take its course now, it would almost certainly lead to disorderly bankruptcy and liquidation for the automakers. Under ordinary economic circumstances, I would say this is the price that failed companies must pay. And I would not favor intervening to prevent the automakers from going out of business. But these are not ordinary circumstances.
How's it going, UAW? It is good to be with some auto workers today. All right, everybody have a seat. Get comfortable.
Stephen Ratner, for instance, confessed after the fact, everybody else was asked to take a haircut, but not the UAW. And when you recognize that one of the reasons they were in that soup was because of these gold-plated salary and pension plans that they were paying the UAW workers, whereas everybody else in the American economy is having to adjust to the realities of the modern American economy, and the federal government was coming in and bailing these guys out. I think that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way.
We saw the government choosing winners and losers, and nowhere was this more evident than Delphi, which was a GM supplier that had been in bankruptcy, and in order to get GM out of bankruptcy sooner, the government decided to help shore up Delphi as well. What ended up happening was all of the non-union workers at Delphi had their pensions slashed by up to 70%, whereas the union workers, the people who were great allies with this administration, their pensions were made whole by GM. So we saw the government organizing and the company picking winners and losers based on their political status. So a lot of these retirees, they retired thinking that they had this money that was going to be there, and the government stepped in and said, no, only the union workers will keep their money.
At big auto bailout, the Treasury Department announcing it'll unload its remaining shares in General Motors by the end of the year. The total cost to you, more than $11 billion. That's on top of the billion plus we lost on rescuing Chrysler.
The administration said, well, this was never about turning a profit, when all throughout the 2012 campaign and all throughout the 2009 selling of the auto bailout, we were told, oh, this is going to be a net gain for taxpayers. And taxpayers were able to recoup their investments into the banks. They were able to recoup their investments into AIG. GM and Chrysler were the only two entities that were unable to result in a profit for the taxpayers.